What if Lionel Messi's greatest challenge isn't in Europe or the World Cup, but right here in the MLS playoffs? The world's best player has conquered every stage except this one. Inter Miami's dream season now hangs by a thread, and the question isn't just whether Messi can win, it's whether his entire American legacy depends on it. Because if he fails here, everything changes. Stay tuned. We'll explain everything in this video step by step. Don't skip it. Opening shot, roaring crowd, floodlights blazing. What a story this has become! Lionel Messi, the man who conquered Europe, ruled the world, and lifted Argentina to glory, now finds himself chasing a brand new kind of crown, the MLS playoffs. And make no mistake, this isn't just another chapter, this is the one that could define his American legacy. He came to Miami like a rock star, turning every match into a headline, every touch into a highlight reel, pink shirts flying off the shelves, stadiums sold out coast to coast. It felt like football had just discovered its own Hollywood reboot. But beneath the glitter and glamour, there's a storm brewing. Can Messi lead into Miami the one thing money, fame, and Instagram followers can't buy? A championship run? Oh, it's been a roller coaster. Injuries, fatigue, wild travel schedules, and a defense that sometimes looks like it's allergic to clean sheets. Yet somehow, the magic refuses to fade. One pass, one dribble, one free kick, and suddenly the impossible looks routine again. This isn't Barcelona. This isn't the World Cup. This is MLS, where chaos reigns and anything can happen. Can the Giot tame the madness? Can he carry a team built around him through the brutal knockout rounds where legends are made and pretenders are exposed? The stakes are sky high. Win, and Messi cements his status as the man who transformed a league and a city. Lose and the whispers start. Was the dream just hype? So buckle up, because the playoffs are here. The lights are brighter. The pressure's heavier. And the script feels like it's been written just for him. Messi's legacy in America hangs in the balance, and the drama's only just kicking off. Lionel Messi's arrival in Major League Soccer was more than a transfer. It was a cultural detonation. The moment his signature hit paper, the league shifted from a regional spectacle into a global conversation. Stadiums filled, social media exploded, and fans who'd never watched a minute of MLS suddenly cared about Inter Miami. Yet beyond the buzz and the branding lies a deeper truth. Legacies in football are not built on moments of arrival, but on moments of triumph. For Messi, whose career has been defined by relentless excellence, the MLS playoffs represent the final exam of his global domination. The world already knows what Messi can do. From the Camp Nou to Lusail Stadium, he's delivered performances that feel closer to myth than memory. But in MLS, the challenge is different. The league's structure, with its playoffs and unpredictability, rejects linear dominance. You can't simply coast on reputation. You must endure travel across time zones, play on artificial turf, and navigate physical, unpredictable opponents who treat every game against you like a personal crusade. It's not artistry against artistry here. It's beauty versus chaos. And that is precisely why this playoff run carries so much weight for Messi's American legacy. In Europe, Messi's supremacy was expressed through consistent excellence over full seasons. Titles were won through sustained superiority. MLS, by contrast, condenses its judgment into a few brutal matches where a single deflection, a missed penalty, or a defensive lapse can erase months of brilliance. That's what makes this test compelling. If Messi can lift a playoff trophy in a system that thrives on volatility, it will signal that even in the world's most unpredictable league, his influence remains absolute. It would be proof that genius can adapt, that mastery can exist even when the rules of dominance are rewritten. For fans, this playoff run is not just about trophies, it's about validation. When Messi arrived, skeptics called MLS a retirement league, a soft landing spot for aging stars. But if he conquers the postseason, that narrative collapses. His success would elevate the credibility of the entire competition. Every goal, every assist, every comeback under playoff pressure becomes evidence that the league can produce legitimate footballing theatre. The legacy he leaves behind would not only belong to him, but to the infrastructure surrounding him, the coaches, teammates, and supporters who witnessed how far excellence could stretch within the boundaries of American soccer. There's also the psychological dimension. Messi's name already guarantees immortality, but in this setting, the equation changes. Without playoff glory, his MLS chapter risks being remembered as a marketing phenomenon rather than a sporting conquest. Greatness without victory invites debate. Victory silences it. The moment he lifts that trophy, every highlight reel, every fan chant, every sold-out stadium transforms from spectacle to substance. The playoff triumph becomes the bridge between legend and legacy, the final punctuation mark on a career that has rewritten the standards of greatness across continents and eras. Into Miami's journey through Major League Soccer has been anything but straightforward. The arrival of Lionel Messi transformed the team from an ambitious project into a global headline, but behind the flashbulbs and viral clips lies a team struggling to find equilibrium. Inconsistency has been the defining feature of Miami's season, a pattern that challenges Messi's ability to impose the same level of control he maintained at Barcelona and with Argentina. Unlike the carefully structured systems he once thrived in, Inter Miami operates within a framework still under construction, tactically raw, defensively fragile, and emotionally volatile. The contrast is stark. In Europe, Messi was surrounded by decades of institutional stability and tactical precision. Every movement was anticipated, every run supported, every touch calibrated by world-class teammates. At Miami, He has often been forced to manufacture rhythm from chaos. Injuries have disrupted chemistry, rotations have unsettled momentum, and the team's dependence on his creativity has made them predictable to opponents. When Messi sits, Miami stumbles. When he starts, they ignite. The gap between those two states underscores a structural imbalance that no individual brilliance can fully disguise. LS compounds this problem through its sheer unpredictability. No team can dominate week after week under the league's parity-driven design. Salary caps, travel demands, and contrasting playing surfaces turn every fixture into a potential ambush. Inter Miami, built around global icons but constrained by roster rules, lacks the depth to absorb these fluctuations. One week they look invincible, combining with fluid precision. Next, they're undone by lapses in concentration and defensive fragility. This volatility erodes rhythm, forcing Messi to operate not as a luxury finisher but as a perpetual rescuer. The midfield struggles to maintain control under pressure, forcing Messi to drop deep and dictate play from zones where his influence becomes a necessity rather than a choice. It's a double-edged dynamic. His presence elevates performance, yet the reliance on him stalls collective growth. Every attacking sequence runs through him. Every counter-attack depends on his timing. Every set piece becomes a test of his endurance. When one player becomes the gravitational center of an entire system's sustainability becomes fragile. The team's inconsistency is both a symptom of transition and a reflection of how difficult it is to build cohesion around a singular genius. Opponents exploit this imbalance with discipline. They close passing lanes, compress space, and force Miami's supporting cast to make decisions under pressure. When those decisions fail, Messi's efforts become isolated brilliance, mesmerizing but insufficient. The defense, often exposed in transition, magnifies the consequences of small mistakes. Without reliable structure behind him, Messi must compensate in multiple phases of play, draining physical resources that were once reserved for moments of decisive magic. What emerges is a portrait of a team still learning how to coexist with greatness. Inter Miami's inconsistency is not just a tactical flaw, but an existential challenge. Can a club still in developmental flux evolve fast enough to match the demands of greatest player ever to grace its colours? The MLS playoffs represent a crucible that tests more than talent. They measure leadership, endurance, and adaptability under conditions where the margin for error evaporates. For Lionel Messi, the challenge goes beyond scoring or creating. It extends to commanding a locker room filled with varying levels of experience and belief. The playoffs compress pressure into short, decisive bursts, demanding instant cohesion. Teams that survive are not always the most skilled, but the most adaptable. For Messi, whose career has thrived on technical perfection and tactical control, this environment requires a different expression of dominance, one grounded in resilience and the ability to impose calm amid turbulence. Leadership in this context is less about instruction and more about influence. Messi has never been the vocal type. His authority has always come through performance. Yet in MLS, where the supporting cast includes players still acclimating to elite expectations, leadership must become visible. His presence alone transforms mentality, but in the playoffs, presence evolves into command. Every gesture, reaction, and decision under pressure sets a tone that ripples through the squad. When he lifts intensity, others follow. When he shows composure after setbacks, belief returns. This subtle form of leadership becomes critical in knockout football, where psychological stability can decide outcomes as much as tactical execution. Endurance forms the second pillar of this test. The MLS season is long, fragmented, and physically draining. Playoff fixtures arrive on tight schedules, often across vast distances and differing climates. For a player in his mid-30s who has already endured years of unrelenting competition, the physical toll becomes a tangible obstacle. Recovery management becomes strategy, pacing becomes survival. Yet Messi's endurance extends beyond physical resilience. It manifests in his ability to maintain clarity when fatigue dulls reflexes and decision-making. The capacity to deliver precision passes, read defensive movements, and execute under exhaustion defines a higher form of endurance, one that separates the legendary from the merely great. Adaptability is the final, most revealing component. The playoffs reject predictability. Tactics shift game by game, sometimes half by half. Opponents tailor plans specifically to neutralize Messi's influence, often through aggressive marking, compact formations, or cynical fouls designed to break rhythm. To prevail, he must adapt, not only to tactical variance, but to tempo fluctuation, emotional volatility. The Messi who once dictated play through technical superiority must now adjust to matches that demand pragmatism, patience, and sometimes raw survival instincts. Adaptability becomes not a compromise of identity, but an expansion of it. Through this lens, the playoffs become a mirror reflecting evolution. They test whether Messi's greatness remains bound to ideal conditions or whether it transcends context entirely. To lead, he must absorb the league's unpredictability without losing precision. To endure, he must channel decades of experience into sustained impact. To adapt, he must reshape his game to thrive in an environment that bends logic and resists control. If Lionel Messi guides Inter Miami to playoff glory, the triumph would mark more than another trophy on his historic RA Sommet. It would redefine his legacy within the American sporting landscape. In a league still fighting for full global legitimacy, his success would carry symbolic weight far beyond Miami's colours. It would affirm that even within a developing football ecosystem, excellence can manifest at the highest possible standard. The narrative would shift from spectacle to substance, from celebrity to conquest. Messi's name would not simply be attached to MLS as an event, it would be embedded within its competitive mythology. Every league has its defining eras. For MLS, Messi's arrival has already triggered a transformation in perception and engagement. Stadiums for broadcast reach new demographics, and global audiences now track fixtures once ignored outside North America. Yet commercial resonance alone cannot sustain legacy. Lasting influence requires competitive validation. A playoff triumph would deliver precisely that. Tangible proof that Messi did not come merely to promote, but to prevail. The distinction matters because legacy in sport depends not on presence, but on the permanence of achievement. The cultural dimension magnifies this significance. America reveres winners. To endure in its sporting consciousness, even global icons must demonstrate their greatness within its competitive framework. A title run would anchor Messi's name alongside the pantheon of athletes who transcended their disciplines. Those who arrived, conquered, and left an imprint that altered expectation. His victory would not simply elevate his own myth, but recalibrate how soccer is positioned within the hierarchy of US sports. It would signal that football, through him, can command the same narrative weight as basketball or American football when glory and drama collide. For Inter Miami, the triumph would crystallize their transformation from novelty to powerhouse. Founded less than a decade ago, the club embodies the tension between ambition and legitimacy. Messi's success would resolve that tension. It would validate their bold construction, reward their financial and logistical risks, and provide a model for future expansion clubs and how star power can translate into competitive substance. The city itself, already reshaped by his presence, would gain a permanent identity as the epicenter of American football's evolution. At the individual level, the achievement would complete Messi's narrative arc across continents. Every major stage of his career has been defined by adaptation: the European dynasties of Barcelona, the emotional redemption with Argentina, and now the frontier experiment in the United States. Each triumph in those contexts reaffirmed his universality. Winning in MLS would demonstrate that his greatness remains operational even when transplanted into a system built on parity, physicality, and unpredictability. It would underscore that his footballing intelligence, the ability to read, react, and reinvent, transcends environment. The legacy he would leave behind through such a triumph extends into the generational sphere. Young American players growing within the league would not just idolize him as a distant legend, but as proof that world-class success can occur within their domestic competition. The aspirational shift would be measurable, redefining ambition within US soccer's developmental culture. Failure to secure playoff success would alter the tone of Lionel Messi's MLS chapter, transforming a narrative of promise into one of ambiguity. The spectacle of his arrival, the surge in global attention, and the commercial explosion surrounding Inter Miami would remain undeniable. But without a championship, the sporting core of his American venture would appear incomplete. Legacy in football is measured not only by brilliance but by closure. Without triumph, the story risks feeling suspended, its conclusion left unwritten. The question would linger: did Messi conquer the league or merely illuminate it for a season? MLS is a league built on volatility, but perception remains ruthless. Every legend who transitions into new territory faces the expectation of dominance. Messi's history amplifies that expectation to an impossible degree. He entered the United States not as an aging player chasing relevance, but as the reigning world champion, fresh from a World Cup that reaffirmed his supremacy. Anything less than competitive victory now invites scrutiny. Fans and analysts would dissect whether the system constrained him, whether Miami's structure failed him, or whether the adaptation itself proved too complex. The absence of a title would not erase his individual brilliance, but it would soften the authority of his influence. The optics of defeat in MS carry unique implications, because the league has long battled the perception of being secondary to Europe. Messi's inability to secure a championship would fuel critics who view his move as comfort over competition. The marketing success would be undeniable: sold-out venues, broadcast expansion, youth engagement. Yet those gains would coexist with the lingering critique that the sporting side fell short. The narrative would fracture between two realities, one commercial and cultural, the other competitive and unfulfilled. For a figure defined by relentless conquest, that duality would feel unnatural. His personal standards magnify the tension. Messi's identity as a player has always fused artistry with efficiency, beauty with consequence. He plays not to entertain but to define eras. In Miami, where his goals and assists have already transformed the team's visibility, failure to translate that into silverware would contradict the trajectory of his career. It would create a rare instance where performance and outcome diverge. The side of Messi dazzling without ultimate victory would invite uncomfortable comparisons. The myth of the magician whose magic no longer guarantees domination. Culturally, such a result would reshape his symbolic role in American soccer. Instead of standing as the athlete who elevated the league to parity with global standards, he would be remembered as the catalyst who exposed its structural limits. The narrative would shift from Messi proved MLS could host greatness to MLS proved even greatness faces resistance here. That distinction alters perception both of him and of the league's readiness for icons of his magnitude. Within his broader legacy, the absence of a playoff triumph would not diminish the totality of his greatness but would remain a visible gap. An unanswered question, a career defined by total resolution across every stage he has touched. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to like and subscribe.